Look, what do you do as a therapist? You act as a strategic counselor. So let's imagine someone comes to see me. So there's two big mysteries, right? What's wrong and what would look better? What's wrong and what would a cure look like? And I don't know. And so if you're a therapist, the first thing you want to do is figure out that you don't know what's wrong with this person, and probably neither do they, and you also don't know what's right for them. And so then you start talking to the person to try to solve that problem. It's like, okay, you've come to see me because something isn't right in your life. What is it? And so then the person has to talk and talk and talk, and you have to ask them questions to find out, because, maybe they're depressed, maybe they're anxious, maybe they came from a terrible family, maybe they're really hard on themselves and things are actually going better than they think. Like, you have no idea what's wrong with them. You're ignorant, and so are they. And so you say, look, you can tell me anything. Try to tell the truth, because otherwise we're just not going to get anywhere, because we're trying to deal with reality here. So tell me the truth. I'm not going to be judgmental in any stupid sense. I'm going to judge like mad because I want to help you do things right. So I'm going to be judging like mad, but I'm not going to throw you out because of the things you say. You're going to have to wander all over weird territory to explain your problem because you don't even know what it is. So you have to listen a lot. And the first thing you want to figure out is, okay, what's wrong here? And the person will tell you 100 things that might be wrong. And they're quite painful to listen to often. They'll tell you about their past and their present. I don't mean painful in that it's not engaging or that it's not worthwhile. I mean, people's lives have a lot of pain in them, so it's painful to partake in that. So they'll tell you like 100 things that might be wrong. And then you do an analysis with them and you think, well, okay, how many of those things really probably aren't a problem? The first thing that happens is if you let a person talk about, let's say they tell you about 100 problems. The first thing you find out is that 90 of them aren't real problems. And the person just figures that out as they talk them through. So they say, oh, well, that's linked to this, and maybe that's not really a problem. That's not as bad as I thought it was, and we can probably ignore that. It's like they have a handful of cards that aren't organized, and they don't know what to do with them. There's too many cards. And so you say, look, lay your cards on the table, all of them. And this is also what you do when you're listening to someone you're intimate with, and they're trying to solve a problem. And you have to be patient to do this, because they're all upset about something. Right? And you don't know what it is. And maybe they're upset about you, and maybe they're upset about themselves, and they're not handling it very well, and they're impulsive and volatile and hard on you. And you say, all right, Christ, I'm going to listen to you. It's like, what's your stupid problem? And then they lay out their problem, right? The problem space. And you have to listen and not jump in there too quickly with a damn solution, because what the hell do you know? So you listen to them lay out the problem space. They lay their cards on the table. Then you say, well, we don't have to pay attention to this, and we don't have to pay attention to this, and we don't have to pay attention to this. And that's the cutting the dragon of chaos down to size. That's what it is. You look at the dragon of chaos and it starts to shrink. Okay, so, and that's because by looking at it, you indicate to the dragon that you're bigger than you thought you were and that you're bigger than it thought you were. And that's very, very useful. So anyways, you lay out your cards and then you start to organize them. It's like, well, actually, I only have 10 problems. All right, so then you think, well, how can we break those problems down into manageable sub-problems, and how can you go about addressing them? That can be very complicated. I hate my job. Well, do you have an alternative? No. Well, why not? Well, I don't have a resume. I hate being interviewed. I'm afraid to make a resume. I loused up my education. I don't have any options. It's like, yeah, that's a lot of problems, man. And that's, those are strategic problems. So then you have to figure out how to help the person strategize and then implement the strategies. And so the next step is, okay, now we know your problems. If you could have a solution, like that would be the opposite of the problem, what might a solution look like? Same issue. It's like, well, there's lots of solutions. I don't know what to do with my life. I don't know what job to have. I don't know what person to establish a long-term intimate relationship with. I don't know what I would like to do with my family. I don't know how to use my time outside of work. I don't know how to resist temptation like drug and alcohol abuse. I don't know how to take care of myself mentally and physically. All these complicated problems. It's like, okay, let's sketch out a potential solution. If you could have what you wanted, so that would be a cure, what would that look like? We formalize this, by the way, in the future authoring process. So if you do the future authoring program, which is part of the self-authoring suite, it will guide you through doing this. It's unbelievably useful to do that, because you're not going to hit what you don't aim at. So then you have the person lay out, okay, well, where are we headed? It's a map. Now we know where we are, and it's a problem. Now we have to figure out where we're headed. And then finally, once we figure out where we're headed, we have to figure out how to get there. We have to make the map. It's got a beginning place, it's got an end place. Now we have to map out the terrain. So like, well, I didn't finish my degree, or maybe I didn't go to college, or maybe I didn't finish high school. It's like, well, do you need a different job? Yes. Do you need a high school diploma to get that? Yes. What steps do you have to take to get a high school diploma? Maybe you have to start with one course. Right? Okay, where do you find a course? You go look it up online. What things make you afraid to go back to school? Which of those things are stopping you? How are you going to overcome those fears? So you take the large-scale vision, which is the place you're headed to in the future, that's the cure, and then you break it down into the strategic elements that are necessary to be implemented on a day-to-day basis. And you do that so that they're difficult, but attainable. And then the person, if they're not difficult, then they're not worth attaining, obviously. Obviously, you're not pushing yourself, and you want the person not only to develop in the direction they're supposed to develop, but you want to get them better at developing. So you want to push them, just like you do with kids or yourself, if you have any sense. And so you break it down into small, implementable, daily processes, and then you review those with your client. None of that's wallowing in self-pity, man. Quite the contrary. Quite the contrary. So psychotherapy is, get your story together. Who are you? Where you're going? Where are you going? What's your strategy? How are you going to learn to overcome the frightening and unexpected things that are going to pop up at you when you implement that strategy? So, and some of those things can be the natural world. I'm afraid of death. I'm afraid of illness. I'm afraid of insanity. And some of those can be the social world. I'm afraid of my boss. I'm afraid of my wife. I'm afraid of my friends. I'm afraid of being humiliated. I'm afraid that people won't like me. Those are the two big classes of fears, right? Fear of the great mother, nature, fear of the great father, culture. And if you're really afraid, you get to have both those fears at the same time. So there's nothing about that that's wallowing in self-pity. Quite the contrary. It's a bad therapist that does that. They're not there to feel sorry for you. They are there to be on the side of the part of you that's aiming up, and to encourage you, and to allow you to have a space where you can lay out your thoughts using your free speech to think, where you can lay out your thoughts about what's wrong with you and how that might be set right. It's nothing to do with wallowing in self-pity.